Hi, everyone. This is episode 5 of Kotaku SplitScreen, and my name is Jason Schreier. I'll be your host for today. And over there to my right in Portland, we have Mr. Kirk Hamilton, our co-host. Hi, Kirk.
Hi, Jason. How's it going?
I say to my right, even though you're really I guess you're to the west of me.
I guess it kind of depends
3,000 miles.
It depends on which direction you're facing, right? Like if you're facing to the south, then I am to your right.
Then you're to my right. Okay, I think I'm facing south right now. We also have a very special guest today. She is a creative director at Amazon Game Studios. She was the designer on Portal, and she is our very good friend, the one and only Kim Swift. Hi, Kim.
Hey.
How's it going, Kim?
It's going all right.
Are you feeling podcasty?
Sure. Why not? I think this might be the first podcast I've ever done.
Is it really? Oh, wow.
Can that be possible?
Yeah, I think
wow,
so.
This is an honor. I feel I feel very honored about that.
This is a perfect place to start.
Do you feel special?
Yeah, well, you started on top. It's like the opposite of the Drake song. You're starting on the top, and now you're here. So, Kim, every time we talk, it seems like you have a new injury. What is your injury today?
I'm just sore from working out, actually. So I don't have any new, legit injuries. But yeah, I'm super accident prone, and I also like extreme sports, which isn't really the best combination, but whatever.
So when you say extreme sports, what do you mean exactly?
Developing video games.
Skydiving, snowboarding, stuff like that.
So how many times have you been skydiving?
I've gone 3 times now, I think. I wanted to get a certification, but it takes a lot of time to actually get a certification. You have to be able to do it pretty much nonstop for about, I think, 4 months.
Does that mean, if you get a certification, does that mean that you can go solo? Is that the idea?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So you were like, no, well, so jumping from an airplane is not dangerous enough for me. I want to do it by myself.
Right.
Yeah, well,
forget this tandem stuff.
Well, it's awkward to have some dude strapped to your back while you jump out of a plane.
It's actually generally awkward to have some dude strapped to your back, pretty much all the time.
I think it's generally awkward to jump out of a plane. That is not a normal thing to be doing. So Kim Swift, always getting injured.
Yep.
I think the first time I met you, you had broken your leg or something like that.
I think I might have been in a cast boot. I'm trying to remember what I did. I think it was just doing something asinine, like tripping and falling or something like that.
Or jumping out of a plane, something
jumping
relaxed and asinine like that.
Oh man. So this has been a fun week, right, Kirk? This has been an interesting week.
Yeah, there's been some video game news happening. Some video game news from the Seattle area, even.
Some interesting stories out of Seattle. Kim, you guys, is the Amazon office near Bungie?
Not really.
Okay.
They are maybe a 20-minute drive from us. So Amazon is located in Seattle proper, and Bungie is over in Bellevue.
Ah, gotcha.
I pretty much just picture Seattle as being everything just right. Everything is right next to there's just a block of area that's Amazon, and then right next to it is a block of area that's Bungie, and then
Valve. Microsoft.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Just we're all lined up, just down one street.
Right, it's a little SimCity layout, just sort of perfect.
I've been to the Nintendo campus, and the Nintendo campus is a whole big sprawling thing. I'm sure Amazon has a campus too, right? You guys have a
yeah.
whole yeah.
They're pretty much. So our offices are actually for the game stuff is in Belltown, and for. Most of Amazon in Seattle is located in an area called South Lake Union, and they are sprawled out. They basically took the area and took it over. It was really interesting for me because I've lived here in Seattle since 2001, and watching the change in South Lake Union over the last decade or so has been amazing, because that area used to be a little shady. And now it's all gentrified and nice, and there's Amazon people walking everywhere, and these really great restaurants. And I'm like, what happened? I don't recognize this place. This is weird.
Amazon happened. Amazon changing the world.
It's funny, so I live in Portland, and a lot of people talk about Seattle as this terrifying cautionary tale. Like, because so I moved here from San Francisco, and I think all three of these cities have this sort of thing in common. Not to go on a whole side tangent about cities and gentrification, but it is something that people in Portland worry about a lot. Because there's such a positive side to it, right? Like, oh, this place used to be not so nice, and now it's really nice, and there's great, stuff everywhere to do, and it's very safe and clean. People in Portland, I think, worry that someone like Amazon is going to say, hey, Portland would be a nice place to set up shop, and then the next thing you know, it's going to be a similar situation, I guess. But it's cool to hear you just describe it as a positive thing, since so many people here seem worried about that.
I think it's a double-edged sword, right? I mean, it comes with a lot of good things in, what you just said. And then also, on the flip side, I understand that, like, desire to maintain this sense of culture. And, as you get lots of new people into an area, some of that definitely shifts. So I can see both sides of it.
Right, I would imagine, especially having
more for me, it's just interesting.
Right, and having lived in Seattle for a pretty long period of time, you've seen it happen gradually, which can be it's an interesting thing. It's definitely something the Pacific Northwest is wrestling with in general right now.
But anyway, the reason that we're talking about Seattle.
Let's talk about your story, Jason. Let's
talk about me.
Let's not get distracted here.
Jason's like, no, me, guys, me. I want to talk
Hey,
about
wait a minute. What is all
me.
this?
But anyway, the reason we're talking about all this is because this week we published an interesting story about the folks over at Bungie and a little video game they made, a little indie they funded on Kickstarter called Destiny. Kirk, you have played a couple hours of Destiny, right?
Couple 100,000 hours of Destiny.
No, you've played like 800 according to that website. That
yeah,
website
no,
wasted
even more.
on
I
Destiny.
think it's
Wow,
I hate that
that's
website.
a lot of hours.
I played a
Yeah.
lot of Destiny. Yeah, I'm addicted to
Kirk,
that game.
I
I
mean,
think I'm actually
the
willing
thing
to
people don't
just
realize-
admit that now.
The thing people don't realize about Kirk is that he can actually, like, he doesn't work. He just spends every single day sitting there and playing Destiny and, like, occasionally chiming in our group
It's
combo.
research, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's all,
Right.
It's for articles.
I've created a really clever bot that just does articles for me every so often so that I can just keep playing Destiny.
So when Destiny shipped back in September of last year, 2014, it was polarizing in a lot of ways because Bungie had promised this big, epic narrative experience, and what they delivered was a game that was fun. It was fun to shoot around in, had some flaws, and had a story that could best be described as unadulterated garbage.
I like fun to shoot around in.
I feel like that's extreme. Unadulterated garbage? I think that's extreme. Isn't that extreme?
I don't know. Have you played Destiny?
I did. I definitely have not played as many hours as Kirk. But I have.
Few people have. I think, unadulterated garbage feels like an overstatement to me. I think the story was just kind of not there. I liked your description of fun to shoot around in. I feel like that could have been the Kotaku back of box quote from our review, even though I didn't say that. But fun to shoot around in, Kotaku.com. I don't know. I think the story was kind of empty, right? Like, there just kind of wasn't really a story. It was just weird. The whole time you played it, it was like, okay, I don't understand what's happening. This doesn't make any sense. It definitely felt like there was something missing. Which, as you found out, there was, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, so you go through and, like, you're kind of besieged by characters talking to you, like this character called the Stranger, who just, like, says all these, like, vague, enigmatic things, like, you must go and fight the darkness. Your light needs you. Guardian, we need your light. Stuff like that. None of it was well explained. It seemed like there was a lot of good mythology and lore, like all this stuff about this being called the Traveler and the Golden Age, and there's a lot of interesting stuff in there, but it never actually came through in the story. So rumors started spreading around, and people started wondering, was this supposed to be the story of Destiny? And as it turns out, it was not. as it turns out, the story actually was rebooted the year before. And that's sort of the story that we told on Kotaku this week, because after like a year of poking around and asking people and trying to get people to talk, I finally put together this piece that goes into the original story, how it was rebooted in 2013 and kind of replaced by this idea of the director and being able to go through missions in a semi-nonlinear order, and everything was rewritten. It was very last minute. There were a lot of issues in Destiny's development. So you should probably, I mean, if you're listening to this and you haven't read that article, you should go read that article.
Just, a little bit of self-promotion there.
Yeah, read it. Maybe share it on Facebook. Put it on social media.
Yeah, maybe share it on Facebook.
Share it with your friends.
Twitter, put it out there.
And click all the ads so you can help us pay our bills. So that was fun. So, I mean, Kirk, I'd been talking to you about that story for a while, and I think I brought it up to you too, Kim. Had you, so what do you guys think of, like, what the revelations that came out of that?
Well, I'll go first, I guess. Obviously you and I have talked about this game endlessly for a whole year, and you and I have talked about this story endlessly for like a whole year. So, I'm so deep in it that it's hard to like be too surprised by any of it, just because I think we'd heard rumors about a lot of this stuff for a long time, and I've talked to enough people in game development like Kim, and a lot of other people, to have a sense that this kind of stuff happens, like that huge changes happen. There are these meetings where people say, hey, this just isn't working and we need to throw it out. And then everything goes into meltdown panic mode, and somehow a game comes out of it, or a broken game gets shipped, or, like something in between. So the whole thing, it didn't surprise me.
How often does it happen, and this is a question for Kim maybe, how often does it happen on that scale, where an entire story is rebooted a year before the game ships?
Just from hearing so it has never happened to me personally. But, hearing anecdotes from other people in the game industry, it happens more often than you think. And it's not just about story. It's like certain gameplay mechanics or certain characters. I mean, Murphy's Law happens. And game development is really hard in that you've got all these different people that have opinions on what is the most important thing in the game, all trying to wrestle with the idea of making the best player experience possible. And a lot of times what happens is we'll go down a path and won't necessarily know that it's the right or wrong path until there's kind of a point of no return where we're like, well, we've got very little time to fix this. Do we fix it or do we not fix it? Yeah.
do we fix it or do we not fix it? Well, I mean, when is the answer? Do we not? No, we're just not going to. We just want to go home today. Screw this. Is that what happened with Aliens, Colonial Marines? They're just like, nah, no thanks. Not fixing this one.
You do have to think there are these times. I don't know. So it's funny because this whole thing makes me think of. Jason, I know you played this. Kim, did you play Matt Burns' Twine game?
I did. It was hilarious.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was for listeners who haven't played it. It was a Twine game called The Writer Will Do Something by a guy who actually now writes for Kotaku sometimes and has worked in game development, a guy named Matt Burns, who's a very smart guy. He and Tom Bissell co-wrote it. And it's really funny. And it's about an imaginary game development studio where they're having this kind of crisis. Like, it's this... The game isn't working. The focus groups hate it. What are we going to do? And the thing that is really remarkable about the game is that it captures how there's always like colliding egos in game studios. I'm sort of like, the sense I get, at least the sense I got from reading Jason's article specifically, was that I would imagine a lot of AAA studios are this way. There are a lot of different departments all working on different things. There's art and there's music and sound and story. And they don't actually, it seemed like from what I was seeing at Bungie, they weren't communicating that well. And that seems like it'd be a really big challenge in these studios, because suddenly you're seeing the story for the first time in however long and saying, oh God, it's terrible. It doesn't work. And then you have to solve this thing that, had been in the works for years. Is that common?
I mean, I think it depends on the studio. I mean, every studio operates differently in terms of how they like to run things. And I don't know enough about the way Bungie runs to really comment on that.
Right,
but
right. Oh, yeah, right.
I've talked to people from studios that it's more like all of the different disciplines are very siloed, and that their leads will put together plans about how things are going to be integrated, and sometimes it doesn't always go that way. Other groups are a little bit more integrated in terms of mixing up all the different disciplines. So on our team at Amazon, for instance, we actually have everybody kind of divvied up into these what are called like strike teams. So each strike team is working on a particular feature, and it's a mix of disciplines between designers, artists, programmers, and so like I feel like we get a better integration to make sure all the pieces are coming together that way. But I mean, really, everybody's different. Everybody has their own philosophy with how best to run their studio, and different things work for different people. I also, on Matt Burns's thing, the bit about the audio guy coming in and saying like, no one talked to me. That is a thing that happens all the time. For whatever reason, people forget audio people, which makes me really sad, because I love game audio. So I try to keep our audio people in the loop as much as possible. But yeah, that's a super common thing that happens. I think that made me laugh the most.
That was one of the best. That part rings very true to me, even though I've never worked on a video game. But reading that, where especially because they come in and they're like, you guys, we can't, like, it's like furious person being like, we can't fucking reshoot the audio because we have to get this actor who played the main character, and he's currently on shoot somewhere in Australia, and there's no way for us to book it, and why didn't you tell me? And just that whole thing seems like one of those problems that people just assume, oh yeah, they can just get the actor to record new lines, when actually it's an impossible proposition.
Yeah, so the thing that seems insane to me is that Bungie is a studio that's 650 people, and it seems incomprehensible to me that you can actually have so many people working on the same game and have some sort of unified creative vision, just because there's no way to communicate everything to all those people. I mean, Kim, so you guys, how many people are on your team over at Amazon?
I can't say.
Oh, right.
So we'll say 1,000.
I'm not allowed to say anything about anything.
Probably 1,000. I'm going to say 1,000.
Yeah, probably 1,000. Yes.
It's not 1,000.
Okay, not 1,000.
I'm comfortable saying that.
So, Kim, can I just start saying numbers and you'll say if it's not the right number until I say the right number?
No, we're not playing this game. No.
So we'll go. We should also go through genres of games. So, Kim, is it a shooter? Is it an RPG? Kim, by the way, for those of you who aren't familiar with Amazon has been working on all sorts of secret things that Kim is not allowed to tell us about. No matter how much she might want to.
Yes, but hopefully I will eventually.
Are you allowed to say on the podcast, are you allowed to say when you guys are going to talk about what you're working on?
No, we're still working out when that final date is anyways. Okay. So we're still fairly early stages on the project that we're working on.
You can't even announce. You still have to figure out when you're going to announce the announcement of the announcement.
Yeah, that is a thing that legitimately has to happen. So one of the things that's interesting that people don't realize is those trailers that announce games, those take 3 to 6 months to make.
Man, that seems like a really good use of time.
So you actually, when you're trying to figure out when you're going to launch your game, you do actually have to back solve, like, okay, well, when would we announce the game? So that way you can make sure that you have a trailer in time for the announcement, 3 to 6 months in advance.
So here's a question. Why do you need 3 to 6 months to make a trailer?
Because it's a lot of work. So first off, you need to have, it depends on what the trailer is. Both of them. So like if you were to do a Blur trailer, for instance, where it's a really nicely pre-rendered little mini movie, essentially, those tend to take a really, really long time because you need to get the storyboards for what you want in that trailer. You need to sign on with a company that will do it. Most companies do not have the internal staff to be able to create, a really, really nice trailer. So they'll usually go with a company like Blur to create those. So you have to sign all the contracts for that, talk over the storyboards with them, write the script. You have to put all of that digital animation together, which is, nothing to sneeze at. Then you have to watch it, make sure if it's good. And then if you don't like stuff, then you need to remake it. And yeah, it's a pain in the butt.
See, I would always think, sometimes I watch those, I think Blur, I might be wrong on this, but the Halo 5 trailer that I was super impressed by, I believe was Blur. They do really good work. And when I watch those trailers, I think about how the trailer also sort of has to depict the game. So when you're making the trailer, you have to also know what's going to be in the game. So I think I think you were at Valve during this, but the original Left 4 Dead, I think it was used as a trailer, and then it was the intro cinematic where it walked through each individual mechanic in the game, and it fit every single one of them into this trailer. I don't know if Jason, if you remember this, where it starts with the 4 people, and then you see throughout this brief kind of pre-rendered action set piece every single mechanic in the game. It's a revive and a flare and each type of special zombie and the whole thing is really well put together. But if you made that and then changed things that were in the game, you'd have this trailer that didn't represent the game anymore. I guess that's also something you have to take into account, right? Is what the game actually does.
Oh yeah. Which once again goes to, you want to make, so there's a few things that have to come into play here. You want to make sure that your announcement for the game is far enough along that you've locked most of your content as far as what the gameplay is going to be, what the characters are, stuff like that. And then you also don't want it to be too far away from your actual launch of the game either. Because then people are gonna forget about you. So it's an interesting dance that you have to do, which is why you're you have to actually plan the announcement. You're yeah, as asinine as it sounds, yes you do.
Yeah, but what's the harm in just saying, yeah, we're working on this thing, you'll find out more about it later? I mean, that's what pretty much every single movie does. They have you can go on IMDb now and look up what's coming in 2018 and 2019.
I think it's because making a movie is a very different beast than making a game. Because a movie is from one point of view, and that's of the director and the person writing the script, and the camera angles in which you are going to actually view a movie from, and that story is already kind of laid out. Whereas with video games, even though we have an idea of what we want the gameplay to be, we won't really know until we've actually put enough playtesting in and making sure that we've gotten enough people to play it and express their opinions to know if that's the right thing. So a lot of times things change, and they change pretty dramatically, which is sort of what you covered in your article. And so it's difficult to just commit and say, yes, this is exactly what we're doing, this is what we're shipping, only to maybe change it 6 months later and make all the people that fell in love with that original idea really, really angry.
Well, first of all, I mean, I think some transparency in that whole process would come a long way. With the Destiny folks, if they had been upfront and talked about what they had gone through after the game shipped, if they had been yeah, we went through a reboot, here's all these challenges we went through, I think they would have earned a lot of sympathy and goodwill from fans. But second of all, I'm not, let's forget about your game for a second, because you're working on something. Yeah, forget
you have
about
no
it.
idea
No,
what
never
you're
mind
talking
your
about
game.
anyway, so it's
right,
fine.
That's true. Right. I assume you're working on something original that has to be told in a certain way. But here's an example. Fallout 4. We posted the scripts for Fallout 4, kind of announced the game before Bethesda was ready to announce it. But everybody, and they were mad about it, of course, but everybody in the world knew that Bethesda was working on Fallout 4. And to me, it's baffling that the video game industry is so obsessed with secrecy that they can't even say, yeah, we're working on Fallout 4, we'll talk about it more later. And just friggin' talk about what you're working on. It makes no sense to me that movie makers can say, yeah, we're working on a sequel to that thing, we can't really tell you too much about it now because we don't know for sure yet, but you'll find out more later.
I think that there is something to the fact, the transparent, I agree that transparency would probably be good for everybody and would help people understand what's going on. There is a thing with when a game is having trouble, though, that it's not great. I can definitely understand why people wouldn't want to share that. I think about like a troubled movie like Ant-Man, for example, that had Edgar Wright attached to it, and then he left, and there was this whole story that it was in development hell, and maybe the movie was going to be a mess. And that narrative was kind of attached to the movie. And I remember a lot of people saying, oh, it's probably going to be bad, because they knew about this behind-the-scenes drama. So I can definitely see people not wanting that stuff to get out.
Right, but it's not like they pretended they weren't working on Ant-Man.
No, right,
We're
right,
like, yeah,
right.
we'll tell like 3 months before. Oh, surprise, we're working on Ant-Man.
It's Ant-Man,
Like, that's what the
surprise.
video game industry would do.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see the point of view if you have an established franchise and you know you're going to be continuing that franchise to maybe not hide it. Like, in the case of our game, we are not continuing a franchise. And so for us, we want to make sure that the first time that we talk about our game and show stuff from it is we know what we're giving our audience. So for us, like, we want to be like super duper sure before we put anything out there.
So you're saying that you're not going to give us all your secrets right now on Kotaku's website.
No, I'm not going to give you all of my secrets right here, right now.
Too bad. We were getting excited. Well, okay, we'll just have to make things up. Maybe the title of this podcast will be Kim Swift reveals all of her secrets.
That'd be great.
In
I'm sure Kim would.
Just kidding.
I'm sure Kim would love to do many more podcasts after this first one, if that's what we do.
I'm sure Amazon PR would love that too. But yeah, so going back to Destiny, so I don't know if you guys, so Kim, I don't know if you could even talk about this, but had you heard any of that sort of stuff from the Seattle scene about Destiny and like what was going on at Bungie over those years?
Yeah, I mean, I heard like the occasional rumor about things, but I mean, having not ever worked there, I never really knew what the real thing or what really happened was. But I definitely heard that stuff happened. But then again, we kind of hear that about all games. Like the thing about developers is we will often, have a friend DA session where we're just like, okay, let's just like dump all the problems that we're having on the table right now and talk about it all. But we promise we're not going to tell anybody else. Like sometimes you just need to vent to people that can understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, well, so as a reporter, part of going through this process was trying to identify whether this is just typical game development or this is a really unusual situation. And I think in this case, correct me if I'm wrong, that this was a particularly unusual situation in that they had talked about all these things that were going to be in the game. They talked about Saturn and Chicago and Europe, and they talked about this great, rich story, and it all never came to pass because of all this drama that went down. I also think it's actually beneficial for the developers at Bungie for this to get out there because it helps people understand the trials and tribulations that they have to go through when making this game. It's not like, oh, you lazy developers, why didn't you make a better story?
Well, but I guess my question is, do you think that the audience knowing what happened behind the scenes will actually make them more empathetic? Or do you think that their perception is going to be like, well, why didn't you have your crap together in the first place?
I saw a lot of reactions, well, partially because one of the key problems at Bungie, as I reported in that story, is that their tools are not ideal and they have a lot of issues with their engine, and it's not their tool set for designers isn't great. It takes a lot of stuff. It takes a little while to get stuff done and to change stuff and make stuff in there. So I think a lot of people were sympathetic to that. And I think a lot of people were sympathetic to the whole situation. They were like, yeah, that really sucks. I mean, it's remarkable that they were able to ship a game in that amount of time in the first place. I don't know. I was reading through all the comments on our article and like Reddit and NeoGAF, all the places where people were discussing this, and it seemed like there was a lot of sympathy toward Bungie.
Yeah. I mean, I think that like the transparency thing we were talking about earlier, I generally feel like over the last, I don't know, 10 years or so, people have just learned a lot more about how game development works. I think like there's been better coverage of GDC. There's been more developers who are willing to talk. There are so many indie developers who used to be AAA who talk really openly about how hard it can be and how hard it is to make games. And just people seem much more aware now in general of these sorts of things. And that's really good. I think our readership and the general public are much more sympathetic to just how hard this stuff is. I see fewer reviews of games that are just teeing up on a game for being terrible in a completely unsympathetic way. There seems like a better understanding of this kind of thing, and I think that's actually very good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I know for me, like I love talking about the game development process. You know, at PAX Prime this year, I did the story time, and the whole premise of it was to
You were the
take.
keynote speaker. You were the guest.
That was
at
good. That
PAX
was good
Prime.
downplaying Kim.
Don't
I was
sell
expecting you to be
yourself
like
short, yeah.
at PAX Prime, where I was the biggest deal at all of
Yeah.
PAX Prime.
Oh yeah, I told a story at PAX Prime. No big deal.
Well, no. So they call their keynotes story time. Like that's the official term for it.
Right.
So I was just trying to use the appropriate term that they call it.
That's good. Very
But
humble of you.
anyways, so I mean, the whole premise of my talk was, you know, common misconceptions about the game industry that I kind of read, you know, through comments on YouTube or Twitter or whatnot, and taking those and using them as a framework to kind of tell the story of how game development actually works. So I know for me personally, like I'm actually very passionate about being more transparent about how games are made, and I'm actually really excited about, like, once we're in a better position with our game to talk about it, to actually kind of like dive in deep with some of the things that we've done on our game and try to teach people about it, whether that's how we make our characters or how we put together a level, stuff like that.
I think that'd be cool. I mean,
Eventually.
The key thing I would suggest is if you're going to do dev diaries, because we get sent a lot of these dev diaries on YouTube, make it be for real in it. Show people, make it more casual and not so prepackaged and not so, we're all so excited to be working on this.
That's usually my style anyways, though.
Yeah, I could see you.
I say just do Kotaku podcasts. Just go on Kotaku
For everything, all of it.
Do the podcast. Yeah, so because you're so transparent, Kim, you're going to tell us all your secrets, right?
No, I said when we're ready. When we're ready.
Oh, right, when we're ready.
This is Jason. This is how Jason operates, by the way. This is the Jason Schreier reporting style, is to just keep asking and asking and
so,
asking.
like, what about now?
So maybe have you changed your mind?
Now? Okay. What about now?
That's literally how I did this Destiny story.
It actually is.
I mean, yeah, I think persistence is one of those traits that is awful in some ways, if as a human being, but as a reporter, it's great.
It's a trade-off. It's like, oh man, it's like
your functional
Batman.
Dysfunction.
Yeah,
I mean, I feel like if you're gonna
can't have a normal life.
Yeah, the best reporters tend to be fucked up people and like awful to be around and like. I think that's why you see so little reporting in the games press, because so many games journalists are just nice people who can't get to the level
please
of
don't hate me. I guess I'll be nice.
Exactly. You can't get to the level of depravity. I mean, like, look at Kotaku.
Are you calling yourself depraved?
A little bit.
Jason is coming
right
clean here. This is
I am hey, it's the Spilling Secrets podcast. I gotta come clean. I think Kotaku, like, the way we piss off publishers and a lot of the people we cover and like are willing to tell those secrets and reveal those Fallout scripts, even though it hurts our relationships with those publishers, that's something that, like, if you're a nice person who just wants to be friends with everyone, you're not going to do that. So games is a weird place. It's a weird industry. Games media is a weird industry in general.
I have a question for you guys. How often do you guys interact with reporters from other media, like, say, film or television? Like, do you guys have any contact with them, like, whatsoever? And are things run differently for TV and movies? Is it the same sort of thing where if you're a journalist in media that you kind of just want to be liked and be friends with the people that make your favorite media? Or do you see them as being a little more heavy-hitting?
I've seen it on both sides. I've got friends who work in entertainment reporting, like in general entertainment. I think it depends. It's like anything. It's definitely a different scene than games in some ways, just because the games industry has a couple of unique qualities. For one, I think, in some ways there's a ton of money in games that isn't always reflected in other things. Like I'm thinking of people who cover comics, for example. There's a lot of similarities with comics reporters, but there's no money in comics, so it just the whole thing has a very different vibe because no one's making any money on the side of like the comics creators, where in games there's like billions of dollars being thrown around. Then in general media, I mean,
that's what Kim gets paid, billions of dollars.
Right, billions of dollars for her 1,000 employees.
$1 billion a year.
I think that with movies and Hollywood coverage, there's a much more established network of everything. I think there are just rules that everyone follows. There are tons of reporters doing the kind of stuff that we do, that Jason does. You know, there are people who their whole deal is just that they report backroom deals and scoops and what new movie is coming and who's going to star in what TV show. And there are just tons of people doing that. So everything just feels more established for Hollywood reporting anyway.
Yeah, something that's different in Hollywood than in games is that in Hollywood, a lot of the agents will be trading scoops with reporters and being like, hey, I'll give you this. There's a lot of like weird back scratching going on where the reporters might write a favorable story and in exchange for promise of scoops, or like trade other scoops in exchange for promise of scoops. None of that stuff really happens in games because PR people in games are so very much all about controlling everything. So like when I reach out to a PR person, if I were in another field, they might have a long conversation with me off the record where they try to drive the way I'm telling the story. Or they might say, hey, if you don't report this, we'll give you this, which has its own set of problems, of course. But in games, it's more like, hey, Bungie or whatever. Actually, Bungie has pretty good PR people. Hey, ex-publisher, publisher like that makes video games. We are running a story about your next video game that you haven't announced yet. We found out about it. Would you like to comment? And then they just don't respond. Or they say, we don't comment on rumors or speculation, which is kind of a weird and I think shitty way of doing things. I think it would be much more beneficial to them if they were more accommodating and more willing to actually work with reporters and be like, yeah, it's true, we're doing this. Like, here, we'll just work with you and give you these official screenshots so you don't have to post leaked screenshots that look like shit. Stuff like that would be welcome in this industry. As you can see, I have a lot of complaints about
you
the video game industry.
You have opinions.
I have strong opinions. Depraved opinions. Just to cap off conversation on this Destiny thing, so we touched upon this a little bit before. I mean, have there been cases where an entire story has been rebooted? Like, I can't think of any cases quite like this where a game has gone through such a development hell. There have been games that still turned out like pretty good and is now excellent, really, after the past couple of years of development. So, like, this is such an unusual case. Like, there are games, obviously, that turn out bad that we've reported on, like Aliens Colonial Marines. We kind of did a report on how that turned out so awful. And there are a lot of games that go through circles and then don't turn out so well. But this seems like a particularly unusual case. Kim, what do you think?
I mean, I know something like this must have happened at some point, just because I know Murphy's Law and I know developing games, but as to any that I am aware of, like on an official capacity, I don't have any there. But you know, making games is hard. I bet this has happened before. We just don't know about it.
Something that struck me about the story of Destiny was that they basically said, fuck the story. The most important thing is going to be making sure that the game feels really good to play and plays well. And that wound up being the thing that saved them, in my opinion. That was what made Year One Destiny a game that we all played a whole bunch, was that it played really well. I feel like that decision almost surely has happened at other games where they've said, man, this story thing isn't working, or this character sucks, or nobody really cares about the story at all. And they say, well, all right, but we're making the game pretty fun, so let's just focus on that and hope it's enough. Like, I think there are lots of games that have done that. So that part of it, at least, rung true to me.
Yeah, the funny thing is, a lot of people were making fun of, because at the beginning of the story, I talked about how Bungie wanted Destiny to be this cultural touchstone, like Lord of the Rings and Star Wars. And it's funny that people make fun of them about that quote, but also Destiny has become like the most talked about video game in the industry because it's such a fascinating story. And like, if it had come out and been as good and polished as people said, I don't think people would be talking about it nearly as much. Like, part of the reason it's so interesting is because it was so screwed up in so many ways when it came out. So maybe this was actually intentional. It was all a devious scheme.
People that purposefully
It
release.
was all a PR stunt. All of it.
You have to release flawed but also good games. That's probably the hardest kind of game to release.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, if that is the metric for success in the game industry, that will be really hard to hit. Like, yes,
Yeah.
you must make a flawed game, but it also needs to be just good enough that
Right.
people will want to talk about it. Like, whoa, okay.
Good luck.
Like, you bring in focus testers, you have them play your game and like give it scores, and they're all like, "Oh, this gets a 9, this gets a 10." The development
You're like,
team's
oh
like, "Shit,
crap, we did too much of
No.
a
Crap,
job.
we need to fuck up part of this.
we need an 8. We need a 7 or 8." The Metacritic bonus, it has to be under an 85.
Oh, no.
Oh man. So speaking of games that are good but flawed, Kim, I hear you've been playing The Witcher 3.
I have been. I haven't gotten very far. I only basically played Sunday afternoon. So I have a horrible tendency where I'm like maybe about 6 months behind the curve in terms of what people are playing. Just because I have this like long laundry list of things that I have to get through, and I'm busy, and I'm like, oh, well, I guess I'll get to this game first before I play the thing that just came out last week. So yeah, I haven't gotten far enough along where I actually have an opinion yet, but man, the hair is really pretty. Like, I find myself just like running around and staring at the hair on people's heads. I'm like, ooh, it's shiny and flowy,
Shiny.
and like the wind blows it just so, and I'm like, ooh, it's so pretty.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, Kim, don't you know that in video games you have to have an opinion within the first 5 minutes? You have to
no,
write a Steam user
that's-
review within the first 5 minutes?
That is not. Yeah, I try to reserve judgment until I feel like I've played enough of the game where I feel like I got the point.
The issue with The Witcher 3 is that it's like 6 million years long. And,
Yeah.
I mean, I love that game actually. Like, I'm playing the DLC right now and think it's a really amazing game. I like it more as time's passed. It's funny that you say that you waited. With The Witcher, actually, playing it now is really smart because they've patched the game a lot. There have been, I don't know how many patches at this point, but I booted it up to play the DLC on PC and was immediately struck by how much better it plays and looks, just in a lot of little subtle ways. So you're actually kind of playing the best version of the game now.
Well, that's good. That's a very good way of looking at it.
Kim, what platform are you playing on?
I'm playing on PS4.
Yeah,
It just kind of struck me as a good couch game. So I was
It is
like,
a good
okay.
couch game, but it's also like so janky and like technically.
Well, I've heard that there's a new patch on PS4 though that has made it run way, way better.
Oh,
But
really?
I haven't tested that out, so I can't confirm it.
What have been the problems on PS4 that people have reported?
Well, I don't know. You might not be far enough to get to the big city, Novigrad, but like I get
Yeah,
there.
I'm not
and,
there
like,
yet.
Well, so I mean, on my copy of the game, I got there. I think that was around where I quit. You get there and like people don't pop in, and like you just walk around and like there's nobody standing anywhere where they're supposed to be. It's just a totally deserted city. It's like the plague just hit. And
maybe
there's, like,
that was on
slowdown and,
purpose,
like-
right? You know, it's setting an
Maybe there
atmosphere.
was a plague.
It's a plot. Maybe they rebooted the story while I was playing it, and they're like, "Nope, we can't have all these characters in there. This is we're starting something new."
I do think that the PS4 version runs better now. I think I saw that somewhere that they finally have
Okay.
raised
Fair.
the frame rate. But it is I mean, it's a really stupidly ambitious game. There are a lot of times in that game where I still kind of can't believe that it all even functions. So that's the sort of game where I'm willing to forgive that sort of, there's some bugs and some, technical jankiness, just because like on a basic visual level, playing it and looking at it, it's unbelievable. It feels like looking at
it's a
some game
beautiful
from the future.
game.
Is it one of your games of the year, Kirk?
Mine? Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no question. I've played that game
Absolutely.
so much, and I appreciate it and respect it more and more the more I play it. They really did something cool, I think.
Fair. My game of the year is Box Boy.
That's a good game too.
It's still Box Boy. Kim, have you played Box Boy?
No, I haven't.
It's like a
Oh,
little
it's good.
Nintendo game on the 3DS. It's really good. But you have played Danganronpa.
Speaking of mobile games,
I have.
Oh man, that's that's one of my favorite games ever.
Yeah, I was on vacation recently and on a bunch of plane flights, so I was like, okay, I need a good game, so I got it on my Vita. So I was playing that.
Oh yeah, you
while
went to
I was on
Ireland,
vacation.
right?
I did, England and Ireland.
How was that?
It was really fun. I've never been before, and so it was great. Everything's very green there. Their potato chips are way better. Like, their snacks, actually, in general, are way better
Really?
than they have here in the States. Yeah.
I thought they had a potato famine.
That was many years
that
ago.
was quite a while ago. I think that maybe is over.
Wait, I
I
thought it
feel
was.
like they sorted that out by now.
I thought it was last year.
The Great Potato Famine of 2014.
I hope they don't have
I don't
another one.
remember
If
hearing
the
about
potato
that,
chips
but
are that
okay.
good, it would really suck if they had another one. The Great
Yeah.
Potato Chip Famine of 2014.
So I'm imagining you on vacation, like not leaving your hotel room and just playing Danganronpa on your Vita the whole time, because that's probably what I would
no.
have done.
I went and did stuff. It was
No,
it
Kim
was
had
more
to.
like I would play it for like a little bit in the morning, or I mean, I was on some really long plane flights, so I would play it on the plane because I
Right,
can't
right.
really sleep on planes. So I just was like, okay, I guess I'll play this and be really unhappy because I can't sleep while everybody else is passed out.
Were you ever tempted to jump off the plane?
No,
Well, just like to skydive.
I see.
no.
Did you spend your entire trip just jumping off mountains?
Yeah, I could really just, open that door. I mean, I was on one of the plane flights on that, in that aisle where they've got the emergency exit. I guess I could have just,
Yeah, you
grabbed
could've.
it.
Like, I
Too
could
bad you don't
rock
have your
this. I could
legs.
totally pull this jump off right now. I'm almost certified. Wouldn't even need a tandem jumper.
So did you just spend your entire trip jumping off various mountains in Ireland?
No. I think probably the bravest thing I did was go horseback riding.
That's not very brave. Lots of
No, it's not at all. Especially since
That's-
I used to horseback ride.
Yeah, that also that was like part of being human. Like a few centuries ago, was like you had to ride a horse. So the fact that would be considered brave, like basic transportation, a few hundred years ago, that says a lot about where we've come.
I'm trying to think of some way to like tie this back to Danganronpa because I want to know what Kim thinks of Danganronpa. Like,
Wait, hold
I'm trying to
on.
picture
That makes
you could go skydiving and like play Danganronpa on your Vita, or I don't know. Like, but wait, but I want to talk about Danganronpa. So you played the first.
Wait,
Danganronpa.
hold on, Kirk. First I have to say that saying that you'd be brave for riding on a horse in the 1800s or in the 1700s is like the equivalent of saying you'd be brave for going in a car today. So congratulations, Kim.
Yeah,
You're
I didn't
super
say
brave.
it was brave. I was saying the bravest thing, which isn't actually brave at all. Though I do know some people that are terrified of horses. Like, that's actually pretty common.
Yeah,
People
riding a
that
horse
are
does
scared
feel
of
kind of
horses.
risky. I don't know. I've done it. You're getting on the back of a giant animal. Like, it is probably a little. It seems riskier anyway than driving a car. It probably isn't statistically, but it seems that way.
No,
Okay,
I
fair.
bet driving a car is actually more dangerous.
Yeah, driving a car is more dangerous than like everything. I feel like I'm always seeing a statistic that says, "Oh, actually, you're more likely to be killed driving a car than anything else." So, yeah.
That's true. Okay, Kirk, talk about Danganronpa.
So now I can do the Danganronpa. So
Now you
segue.
can do
So
the
what if you were
Danganronpa
riding a horse and playing Danganronpa? What would you think of Danganronpa?
You'd be like, oh my god. So I guess we should explain, because some listeners who are like, oh, I tuned into this podcast to hear Kim Swift spilling secrets. Some listeners might not know what Danganronpa is. So Kirk, do you want to tell people what Danganronpa actually is?
Sure. Yeah, Danganronpa is the game that makes you stop listening to podcasts and stop reading Kotaku articles because you think it looks weird. It's a really good game though, and that you shouldn't do that. So Danganronpa is it's on the Vita. It's made by Spike Chunsoft, and it's a strange sort of hybrid of a courtroom thriller and an interactive novel. It's set in a high school in Japan. It's the high school for all of
All the best games.
really actually like a lot of really good games. It's set in a high school in Japan. And it's the high school where everyone is an ultimate, and there's like the ultimate baseball player and the ultimate scholar and the ultimate, I don't remember, leader. Everybody is like the greatest at what they do. And then the students all wake up.
Ultimate Gamer.
There is an Ultimate Gamer.
That's two. That's Danganronpa 2.
The ultimate, yeah. So the students all the main character wakes up, and the students have all been locked in the school, and there's this psychotic bear, like stuffed bear called Monokuma, and he tells them all they're basically on a game show, and they have to, there's complicated rules, but basically they're going to be killing each other and then trying to figure out who killed another student. And if they can get away with it, they can leave the school. Otherwise, they also get killed. So it's just sort of a mixture of, Battle Royale and Persona, and there's social dating simulator
I
stuff in there.
actually kind of compared it like Battle Royale meets... So my comparison is Battle Royale meets Ace Attorney.
Yeah, it's definitely got some Ace Attorney. I think my original review just did that. It just listed the things that it was like, and it just said it's part Ace Attorney and part Battle Royale and part Persona 4.
So Kim, what did you think?
It was interesting. Like I finished playing it, and my reaction was just like, huh. Okay.
You weren't just rapturously freaking out on it, like maybe on a popular video game blog, like certain other people on this podcast were.
Yeah, that's not a glowing review.
No, I mean, I really liked it, but at the same time, it's a very strange game to recommend to people, because when you start to describe the plot and the fact that it's a very scripted game. You don't really have a whole lot of choice as a player. You're kind of just sort of along for the ride for the story. And then you describe the story to people. They just kind of give you this blank look of like, what, are you okay? Are you having delusions? This is really the thing?
It's weird. It's got this kind of seductive thing to it, I think, that's really interesting. I think that's maybe its most interesting quality, and it's hard to describe to people, but there's a kind of a tawdry darkness to that game that really sucked me in a way that it was hard to articulate without sounding kind of creepy even, because it's, it's got all this kind of... I don't know, sort of tawdry Japanese sensibility to it. There's a lot of these.
Yeah, I mean, it's got some sexual undertones to it. Yeah,
definitely.
Sure,
and it's these kind of hot young people murdering each other. There's lots of these still like drawings of cute girls wearing schoolgirl uniforms with like almost kind of upskirt shots and stuff. And it has this, but it's not just something that you look at and think, oh, well, that's cheap and lame. It kind of, over the course of the game, it's appealing. It really pulled me in. It's hard to describe why, but it has this kind of dark gravitational pull.
Sales pitch here, Kirk.
No, I know, but when you play it, you do get sucked into it, right? And the characters are, I think, really good. Actually, I think some of the characters are really surprising, and the main character is a drip. But I really liked the detective. What's her name? Jason, do you remember her name? Kim, do you remember? I can't believe I'm forgetting now because she was my favorite character.
It's Japanese. I mean, it's hard to remember all the Japanese names.
Yeah, she has pink hair and wears gloves and is super cool.
Kyoko, is that?
Yeah, Kyoko, that sounds right. So, I really liked that character. I liked some of the other characters. I thought there were some cool fake outs. They did a thing with this game. Kim, maybe you don't know this, but maybe you do. What's really funny is we wrote a preview. Richard Eisenbeiss, who writes for us sometimes from Japan, he did an import preview of the game, and it was just the first chapter. Which, spoilers, if anyone cares, I'm going to spoil the first chapter. In the first chapter...
No, don't spoil it. You shouldn't spoil it, because a lot of people...
Okay, I won't be specific. Surprise. I won't be specific, but I'm going to say what happened, because this is a funny thing they did. They played a demo, and someone gets killed in each chapter of this game, and then the culmination is you do a trial, and you try to figure out who did it. And one character is killed in the demo, and so in his demo, he talks about that. And I went back and read it, and it's a different character than's actually killed in the final version of the game. Like, they previewed it, and they wrote a whole fake out, basically, so that when people read the previews and when people who played the preview then played the final game, they were surprised because the actual person who's killed is someone you're not expecting. And it was this big fake out, which I don't think I've ever heard of a game company doing that before, like making
just
a
for the game
pretty
preview.
Amazing
They wrote
fake
this whole
out.
thing just for the game
Yeah,
preview.
just for the preview, which I think is so freaking cool. Just that really
Although I
cracked
guess
me up.
they might have sent that demo to players in Japan. I don't remember if it was just for
If they
press.
did, it would make more sense if they did, but yeah, I don't know either.
Yeah, I think so too. But yeah, that's brilliant for a game like that. And then so Danganronpa, so there's also Danganronpa 2. You have not played that, right, Kim?
I have not played it yet.
Okay.
It's on my list.
Yeah, I recommend it. It's really cool. They both came out last year for the Vita.
It's good.
And then,
You have to be willing to sign up for some serious Danganronpa lore, though. It goes really deep into. I mean, you know how crazy it gets at the end of Danganronpa with just all this.
Yeah, it kind of goes off the rails.
Yeah. So Danganronpa 2, most of the first maybe 80% of the game, it's like Danganronpa 1 didn't really happen, and then the end is just ridiculous, like the Matrix Reloaded level, like just totally bananas.
Yeah, it's funny. And then, well, so what? Another game just came out called Danganronpa Another Episode, and I don't think either of you have played that. Am I correct?
No, I looked at it, and it looked like it was almost a different game entirely in terms of the gameplay.
Yep.
I could be wrong, but that's what it kind of looked like to me.
It's like a Resident Evil style shooter game, and it's like really janky and like not good. The gameplay is not good. And it's set between Danganronpa 1 and Danganronpa 2, even though you're supposed to play it after 2 because it's just that's the sequential order. But the story is really interesting, and I'm like hooked on the story, and I started playing it because I'm really into Danganronpa. But the action and like the shooting are so janky that it's like hard to play more. So that's that. I'm considering. I'm trying to decide whether I'm going to stick with it just for the story or like read it online. But I hope they don't go that way again because they did just announce Danganronpa 3. I think that's going to be back to the visual novel style, which is way better. But yeah, it's like Resident Evil style shooting where you can't shoot while you move. So like you pull you hold the trigger and like your character stops, and like it's really hard to move the camera around and like target things, and it's just really not that type of like it feels like it was speaking of games that should have scrapped things at the last minute. They should have been like, all right, we're not going to do it this way.
Yeah,
we want this to.
I played some of it at E3. I think that was the only time I played it. I have it. I just haven't had time to play it. But it's funny too that. I think the thing about the first Danganronpa that's one of the weirdest things about that game is how there are all these weird shooting mechanics that take place during the trials, where it's basically a Phoenix Wright trial where you're saying objection, almost literally objection, that's not right, and then you point out the contradiction. Only you do it with this weird arcade game where like you have to guide a bullet to shoot the words that don't match up with, and it's so weird. I mean, it's kind of charming in its weirdness, but it's so
super
weird.
Awkward.
Yeah, so then that they would say, oh, I know what we'll do. We'll make the next game an actual shooter with also shitty controls and weird mechanics. Like, it just seems like, no, guys, that's the wrong direction. Like, take that stuff out and just make it a sort of story. You know, it's fine.
So you don't feel like the story would justify carrying the, like, awkward gameplay? So, like, Deadly Premonition, for instance, I actually finished that game in spite of the fact that the controls and some of the actual mechanics of the game are maybe not the most amazing. But the fact that the story is just so over the top, like jump the shark ridiculous, I was like, well, maybe I'll just keep going.
So yeah, so I love that game. I love Deadly Premonition. That's interesting that you bring that up. I think that game is like one of the best examples of a rare case, because we were talking about this with Destiny earlier, where they threw the story out, but they made the gameplay really well, and then that saved them. And I think that's a more common narrative than the Deadly Premonition narrative, which is, yeah, the gameplay is so badly, you feel like you're being punked sometimes. Like the camera angle will change to something fixed, and the controls get so bad that you swear they're looking at you and laughing and saying, this was just, where I'm not sure that was the intent. But then the story, right, is so interesting, and the game itself is so compelling that it makes you want to stick with it. I almost think, I mean, I'd love to know what you think of this since you've played it and you're an actual game designer. But that game is designed really interestingly, I think. I saw Swery gave a talk at GDC, and it was really cool. He was just talking about all the systems that he designed for that game, the way that every single person in the town has their own schedule, and there are all these timed events that you can miss, and there's all this hidden stuff. And, you know, people plumbed that game for secrets for just months and months after it came out, because if you go to this certain place, you can have this conversation with this one woman because she's at home with her husband at this time. And that stuff, from a design perspective, I think is really, really cool. I don't know. I guess I'm curious what you think of it, having played it.
That was a long sentence. I'm trying to parse what the actual question is.
That's a common problem.
Welcome to the world of Kirk Hamilton.
I just say long things and then say, "What do you think of that?" I mean, my question is, do you think that game is well designed?
From a traditional like game design sense, in terms of like so my personal philosophy is like trying to make the best player experience possible, but that's my own personal philosophy, and definitely other game designers take the view of more of like a movie style point of view, where it's, this is my expression, my point of view, it's going to be this way and you're kind of along for the ride. So I don't know if it's a good or bad design so much as it's just different, and different people have different philosophies. I know that's very non-committal of me.
Well,
but,
I guess
yeah.
the thing I find, so the separate question maybe, but the thing I find with that game that I've seen in more and more games is with Deadly Premonition, there seems to be this fearlessness about players not finding everything or not seeing everything or doing it wrong and missing huge parts of the story. And that seems to be more common in games in general, because that actually, for some players, makes for a better experience. Some people really like that feeling of, I have to investigate this and I have to get on, whatever message board and find all the hidden secrets. And that's a better experience for them than being sort of the developer or designer making sure that they see everything. I guess I wondered if you think that is a good player experience, like making a game so that you can just miss stuff, but that's the point.
So I personally love burying sort of those mysteries and secrets in the world. So like all of the behind the scenes stuff in Portal was me doing all of that stuff. So
Nice.
I love doing those things.
Was the cake is a lie? Was that your creation, Kim?
It was between me and Eric Wolpaw, who was the writer on the project, and we were trying to figure out what would be a good carrot to dangle in front of players that was kind of demeaning. And I would bring in cake all the time because I apparently want to give all of my employees diabetes. So I bring in like cookies and cake and stuff all the time. And so we just were eating cake. We're like, yes, it'll be cake. Anyways.
That's great. I didn't think I'd heard that story before.
Spilling secrets, Kim Swift.
So yeah. What was I have to go back. What
Hiding
was
secrets.
my original?
Secrets.
Yes, hiding secrets. I love doing that kind of stuff. Just because I know for me, I'm the type of game player that loves exploring. I love uncovering those things, so I try to put those there as much as possible. I can understand the flip side of not wanting to do that, because game development costs a lot of money. So the more intense or the more time intensive the secret, the more money it's going to cost to make it. So, like, for instance, if you were to bury a secret that would require a programmer, an artist, and a designer to go off and do something for, like, a couple of months, like that's really expensive, and you know that players aren't maybe necessarily going to see that, and so you have to kind of do this, like, trade-off return of investment of, is it worth burying this stuff if we know that only maybe 10% of players is going to see it? Is it worth the money to do that?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that's the other flip side of it, but I love that stuff.
So Kim has actually buried a secret in this podcast, and if you listen to it properly, you can actually find out what Amazon is doing right now. With all those purchases, with that big CryEngine deal and all the game designer hires.
Just listen to it backwards. If you listen to the whole thing backwards,
to this podcast backwards,
you'll hear like, Amazon.
If enough people, if over one,
it'll just reveal all of it.
If over 100,000 people listen to this podcast, then a secret will be revealed.
So share an RT. Share an RT. Please.
If this gets to the top of the iTunes game and hobbies chart. So last week we got to number 8. That was our highest on the games section of iTunes. This time, if we get to number 1, then Kim will spill her guts.
No.
Damn, it seemed like that was going to work for sure.
I thought that was a foolproof plan. So I think that about does it for this episode of Kotaku Split Screen. Kim, thank you so much for being here, for taking the time to spill all of your secrets with us today.
Anytime.
And Kirk, thank you for being here, even though you're contractually obligated to be here.
I was actually playing Destiny the entire time we were doing that.
That's what you normally do during work hours.
It's cool. I got both dailies done. I earned a whole bunch of rep. It was really good.
Yes, very much. And okay, thank you everyone who is listening, who suffered through this entire podcast. I mean, who really loved listening and just was captivated by Kotaku Split Screen episode 5. Be sure to...
They got to learn that you're depraved.
That's true. That's a good secret.
That was the big secret.
Be sure to leave a rating on iTunes, because apparently we need those, and nobody's been leaving reviews, even though it's been skyrocketing on the ratings and we've gotten a bunch of subscribers, or on the rankings, and we've gotten a bunch of subscribers. We need some reviews, so leave a review. If you have any questions, comments, feedback, you can email splitscreen@kotaku.com. Kim, is there anything you want to promote? Do you want to give us your Twitter feed?
My Twitter is at K2, like the number 2, the Swift. And
K to the Swift.
K to the Swift. So feel free to follow me on Twitter.
For all the latest secrets, follow K to the Swift on Twitter.
Oh, yes, all the secrets. All the time.
And yeah, that'll do it. Thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you all for being here. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, 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 everybody.